Every place has a sound. I hear Brazil in the voices of fans screaming "Ai Corinthians" at a soccer match. I hear Vietnam in the bright birdsong around rice paddies. And I hear South Africa in the whisper of grass as the wind blows across the savannah.
As students who wish to become doctors, the most important sound we will ever hear is a pulse. And during our travels as students on the International Honors Program, a study abroad program comparing the health systems of the US, Brazil, Vietnam, and South Africa, we made a critical discovery.
The steady 1-2 of footsteps, the quick zoom of subway trains underneath a bustling city, and the clogging of cars and bikes at intersections. All of these combine to form the pulse of a place. How people move, whether it's by buses, trains, cars, or bikes, makes a critical difference in individuals' daily lives. Transportation is one of the biggest indicators of a city's health, and it has immense influence on population health as well.
The places we went on this program provided a key opportunity to examine transportation at a critical point. Brazil, Vietnam, and South Africa are all considered to be emerging markets, or developing countries on the cusp of becoming developed countries similar to the US. GDP per capita and the overall economies are experiencing great growth, and increasing affluence means that demand for transportation infrastructure, both private and public, is skyrocketing.
So in addition to our programmed activities through IHP, we decided to take on one additional task: to understand the established transportation systems within these 4 countries, and to examine how individuals made their choices within each of these systems.
In other words, to put our fingers on the pulse of D.C., São Paulo, Hanoi, and Islington. From cars and trains to buses and planes. What makes these cities tick?
As the capital of the United States, Washington, D.C. holds a political and economic significance that ranks among the major international centers of the world. In 2006, the Washington Post reported that U.S. Census Bureau data indicated the D.C. metropolitan area was the wealthiest, most educated metropolitan area in the United States.
Home to a significant number of workers who live within the city as well as within surrounding suburbs, D.C.'s public transportation system is extensive. The 2 primary systems are Metro Rail, the underground subway system, and Metro Bus, the city busing system. In 2009, 37.1% of district residents used these systems to get to work. Ridership has increased by 38% since 1998, more than the 21% increase in car usage, or 14% increase in population.
We were curious as to how large the metro system is. Like, how far out does it go in D.C.? Do you know, like, how many miles of track or something that we could use to kind of get a sense of how big this whole system is?
I'm getting mixed up, but I'm thinking it's 109 miles.
Okay.
But, you know, it goes in different directions, so it pretty much gets you all over the city. It gets you from Maryland to Virginia, from Montgomery County to PG County to the center of D.C. Right now, it's still a lot cheaper than getting in your car, putting in gas in your car, and driving. We're going up on the price, but still, if you leave here and say you need to go to Bethesda, you're going to burn maybe close to $10 worth of fuel. Here, during rush hour, it's $5, $5.45 one-way trip, so you're still coming out on top.
Do you use the metro yourself? Because you mentioned it.
Yeah, I do, because when you go downtown, like Chinatown, a gallery place, it's nowhere to park. So, you know, it's good because you can pretty much get where you need to go, exit the station, and you're downtown. You don't have to worry about putting money in the meter.
Now, do you also own other forms of transportation?
Yeah, I was strictly a car person because I live out in the suburbs of Maryland, so I do need a car to get to work. But if I didn't live so far out, I would totally depend on Metro.
The Metro rail system services 744,000 trips daily on a rail network which stretches 106 miles. Users enjoy its speed and user-friendly network of 5 lines, as well as its affordability, but the network also has its limitations.
There's good and bad things, I think, with public transportation. The trains here in DC are pretty organized. They're pretty efficient. They're pretty good. I think they don't cover the entire district really well. There's areas that are not served by public transportation, and then there's not equal access to public transportation. And we chose an area where we had really good access to public transportation, but not everyone has the opportunity or the ability to live wherever they want. We paid a lot of money in rent, and part of the reason why we paid so much to live in the area we lived is because it has really good access to the bus lines and to the train. So we paid for it. So that's kind of one thing, is it's expensive. But overall, I think I was happy with taking public transportation.
The Metro bus system has 11,490 bus stops and 2,398 shelters, 323 routes as of August 2011. It services 440,000 trips weekly, a significant usage rate, but nevertheless much less than the subway system.
Buses, I use very little. I don't really like taking the bus system. It gets very confusing, especially if you get on the wrong line, like L8 instead of L7 will take you somewhere else. But I feel like I just don't like to use it. I know some people are really big bus users. I'm just not that type of person.
Why is the bus system, like, what are the differences between the bus and subway system that makes the bus system confusing but the subway system like pretty straightforward?
Well, I think it's like, it depends on where you live. Like, so if you're taking a bus, the buses will take you somewhere, but they won't take you everywhere, whereas the Metro is connected. So you can transfer, like worst comes to worst, you can make a last minute transfer. The buses, you need to, if you get on the bus and you don't know where you're going, usually the bus drivers are nice enough to tell you that you're on the wrong bus and that you need to transfer, or sometimes where you're going you need to take 3 different buses, so you have to transfer twice, in which case you'll have to ask for a transfer ticket. And it's also just like, it's just a hassle, kind of. Whereas like a Metro card, you just put in, and like it's a one-time you go in, and then you just go wherever you end up leaving.
So like the ticketing?
The ticketing is that's one-time consuming thing. Yeah, and then the other one is waiting for buses in between. Because it's like, you're not going to always know when the bus is going to arrive, so you kind of just hope that it'll come within the next 30 minutes. And the buses used to, as a kid, I remember waiting for buses really long.
Of course, there are also private modes of transportation. 43% of district residents used cars to get to work. 2.2% of DC residents used bikes to get to work, a notable statistic given DC's groundbreaking bike-sharing program and extensive biking system.
I'm a little bit more of a cyclist than my wife is. I encouraged her, and she did cycle a lot, but I cycled much more throughout the winter. So I think maybe 9 months of the year, that was my major transportation method, was bicycling. Sometimes I would walk, and sometimes I would take the Metro or buses, but mainly it was bicycling.
The bike share program consists of 100 sharing stations and 1,000 bikes, which can be rented and returned to any station around the city. In addition, DC has 56 miles of bike trails and 50 miles of bike lanes, as well as a 10-year policy plan to improve and increase the popularity of biking as a mode of transportation in the city.
Washington D.C. a number of years ago really made it a policy. They really focused on bicycling, and they built bicycling lanes. They put resources, the city has put resources into making it easier for people to bicycle, so they encourage people to bicycle. And I reaped the benefits of that. I felt safer on a bicycle. There were places for me to leave my bicycle. There were incentives, even tax incentives, I think, for me to have a bicycle. And now the city has started a bicycle share program, so similar to what Paris has done, where they have, it's called the Capital Metro Bikes, Capital Metro Share, Metro Bikes. And there are bicycle stations all over the city. There's literally hundreds of them, and now in Virginia and Maryland also. So you pick up a bike, and you ride it to another place, and you leave the bike at another station. it's just like a really cool idea, and you don't own the bike, but you rent it for that short amount of time. I think that's part of it. The city has decided, we want people to bicycle, and so for me, I really enjoyed it. I liked it.
The district owns only 17,000 metered parking spaces. 1.2 million riders board the DC public transportation system each day. Comparing those statistics, one can see how that number of parking spaces falls short of the demand for parking in the city.
The benefits of using a car is obviously you can go directly where you need to go. There's no walking involved or anything like that. The disadvantage of it is that you have to find parking, and like I mentioned before, downtown DC has no parking spaces, and if they have it, it's very limited.
DC was unique from other countries we would later explore due to the existing awareness of the environmental impacts of transportation choices. Both in public policy and individual behavior, environmentally friendly solutions were sought out and implemented. Cost remained a huge ongoing concern for transportation in DC. Currently, the yearly operating budget for Metro Bus and Metro Rail is $1.6 billion. The capital needs inventory estimates $11 billion will be needed for upkeep and expansion of the system in order to prevent overcrowding over the next 10 years.
But the DC transportation system has proven itself worthy of its expenses. It supports a workforce of 10,000 employees and saves families $342 million per year in car operating expenses. The Metro adds to property value, starting at a 6.8% increase for residential homes and going up from there. This earned DC $4.9 billion in extra property tax revenue in 2010. The transportation system provides a safe and effective transportation method for the 24% of DC residents who do not have access to a motor vehicle, as well as for 8 million tourists each year.
Without regional transit, the DC metropolitan area would need to add over 1,000 lane miles of arterials and highways to maintain current travel speeds, a capital cost of $4.7 billion. Associated with this, building additional parking would cost $2.9 billion.
Though the public transportation system in DC has its flaws and will face some future challenges, its popularity among DC residents has made it into a significant force within transportation in DC, an ongoing and strong influence on this city's pulse. The 2 weeks we spent here examining people's transportation choices prepared us well for our first international foray in studying transportation in São Paulo.